and I talked to one of the refs when she checks in. Hey, we got history from the first game.
There's not just a voice. There's these pictures, that have come out. And I know a lot of people immediately want to say, well, these are, they're not real pictures, right? They're doctored photographs. But this one I saw, I was like, man, that's actually the girlfriend in the background.
The fire-breathing TV judge who reinvented herself as a no-nonsense legal bulldog. Out of all the people who could have taken a swing at one of women's basketball's biggest stars, nobody thought she'd be the one to slam the gavel. But the shock result? Griner is officially out of the Olympics. When word first broke that Piro was dragging Griner into a courtroom showdown, fans couldn't believe it. At first, people thought it was a parody headline, like a late-night skit about sports and politics colliding in the wildest way possible. But nope, it was all real. And the stakes were sky high. This wasn't just about fines, suspensions, or a warning. This was the Olympic Games, the ultimate stage in global sports, hanging in the balance. And Piro didn't march into this fight looking for attention. She planted her flag as the so-called defender of the integrity of women's athletics. That one line alone had jaws on the floor. Why would someone completely outside the sport take on a WNBA legend? From day one, it was clear this wouldn't be swept aside as a joke. The court treated it with full legitimacy, and just like that, what looked like a random headline spiraled into a headline-grabbing legal war shaking the very foundation of women's basketball. Everyone was scrambling for answers. What evidence could Piro possibly have to take down Brittney Griner? At the very peak of her career, Griner's new battleground wasn't the hardwood, it was the courtroom. Her legal team brushed it off as pure circus, calling the case ridiculous, unnecessary, and out of line. But Piro wasn't playing. She came swinging hard, hurling accusations that went way beyond banter. She was going for the knockout blow. Piro came out swinging, accusing Brittney Griner of tainting the very soul of women's competition. She dragged everything into the open: training routines, overseas career moves, even whispers of unfair advantages that had been floating around for years. Inside the courtroom, the tension was electric. Judges weren't relaxed or dismissive. They were locked in, leaning forward, dissecting every word. And session after session, the tide started to turn. Griner, the same towering force who usually crushes opponents with ease on the hardwood, suddenly looked trapped in a space she couldn't dominate. Each fresh blow from Piro's legal team piled on more heat, more pressure. This wasn't about scoring buckets or swatting shots anymore. This was about reputation, integrity, and whether her Olympic dream could survive under the scorching fire of cross-examination. And here's the wild twist. Instead of fading, Piro's case kept building momentum week after week. What most people thought would be tossed out as a publicity stunt exploded into a courtroom war. Fans outside were stunned. Their hero wasn't gliding through, she was actually stumbling. Then came the thunderbolt moment. The judges delivered their decision, and it rocked the sports world like an earthquake. Brittney Griner was officially barred from competing in the upcoming Olympics. Just like that, her golden ticket to the world's biggest stage was snatched away. For a player who built her whole legacy on global dominance, this wasn't just a loss. It was devastation in its rawest form. Analysts wasted no time calling it one of the harshest penalties ever dished out in modern sports history. Fans were left stunned, asking the same question over and over. How could a courtroom verdict, delivered by someone who's never even stepped on a professional court, decide the Olympic fate of one of basketball's biggest icons? The disbelief was unreal. But Jeanine Pirro, she soaked up the spotlight with pride. She bragged that the ruling was a win for women everywhere, saying it proved that cutting corners and bending the rules would never fly on her watch. Meanwhile, Brittney Griner stood frozen, visibly shaken, trying to process the hit she just took. For a player who usually dominates the paint with pure power, this was the first time she had been boxed out so viciously, and not by a rival athlete, but by the hammer of a gavel. The decision was final, stamped, sealed, and untouchable. And the fallout? Absolutely massive. This wasn't just about missing out on Olympic gold. It rewired how the world saw her. Griner walked into that courtroom as a superstar, untouchable, one of the most marketable names in women's basketball. But she walked out under a dark cloud, branded by scandal, laughed at for letting a TV judge of all people find cracks in her game that no opponent had ever managed to expose. Sports analysts who once praised her dominance now picked apart her credibility like vultures. Fans who once swore she was untouchable suddenly weren't so sure anymore. And her near-total silence after the verdict only made things worse.
You seem concerned but hopeful.
I'm only hopeful if she doesn't win. If she wins, we're going to have a real problem in this country. And the problem will be on the world level, it'll be on a national level, and it'll be on a state level. I don't know what she brings to the table other than disaster.
Before, but nothing ever cut this deep. Her highlight reels, her record-breaking stats, all of it vanished in the shadow of this blow. What the world saw wasn't a superstar. It was an athlete humiliated in the most unexpected way. And the wild twist. It wasn't by a rival forward or a head coach scheming against her. It was Jeanine Pirro parading outside the courthouse like she just won a championship, clutching that ruling like a trophy. But the sting didn't end there. Almost instantly, the fallout twisted into something even darker. Old debates about Griner's gender and eligibility, whispers that had been lurking for years, came roaring back into the spotlight. Headlines, talk shows, and social feeds lit up with speculation, with people questioning whether she carried some kind of unfair advantage in women's sports. And here's the bombshell. Piro's own legal squad leaned into those whispers, weaving them straight into their courtroom playbook. Overnight, the case wasn't just about her Olympic ticket anymore. It turned into a firestorm about biology, identity, and the future of women's athletics. Whether people agreed or not didn't even matter. Once those claims got tied to a legal decision, the volume went through the roof, and suddenly the world couldn't stop buzzing about it. For Griner, the backlash was brutal. The criticism wasn't just about her game anymore. It was personal, it was mocking, and it struck way below the belt. People weren't just debating her skill. Some were openly asking if she even belonged in the women's league at all. The narrative was messy, explosive, and every headline only made Piro's courtroom triumph look bigger. This wasn't just losing an Olympic shot. It was being thrown back into a perception war she thought she'd already buried. And this time, it came back louder and harsher than ever. And once a debate like this blows up, shutting it down is nearly impossible. Think about what this ruling really means. The Olympics aren't just another tournament. They're the crown jewel, the dream every athlete bleeds for after years of sacrifice, sweat, and relentless discipline. Brittney Griner was already considered a lock for Team USA, the towering force expected to crush international rivals and lead her country to gold yet again. But now, it's gone. Not paused, not delayed, gone. She's not just missing a season or waiting on a comeback game. She's been stripped of her chance to wear the red, white, and blue on the world's biggest stage. That kind of wound doesn't heal fast, no matter how strong the athlete. Fans had already pictured her draped in medals, standing tall with her team. Instead, they'll be watching her from the sidelines, stunned at how her golden path collapsed into scandal almost overnight. And the hit wasn't only emotional. Financially, it cut just as deep. The Olympics aren't just about glory. They're a gateway to endorsements, global recognition, and deals that secure an athlete's future beyond the hardwood. Without that spotlight, Griner's career suddenly looks shaky, and the emotional toll is crushing. Imagine dedicating your entire life to one shining moment, only to see it ripped away by a judge's gavel instead of an opponent's defense. For Griner, this wasn't just a bruise on her reputation. It shattered the untouchable legacy she thought she had built. Meanwhile, Jeanine Pirro was outside the courthouse glowing like she just nailed a game winner at the buzzer. She bragged that the ruling wasn't just her personal win, but a victory for women everywhere. Piro claimed the case set a new precedent. No athlete, no matter how big their name, could ever bend the rules and escape the fallout. Piro's words cut like blades, and they spread through the media like wildfire. To some, she became a hero, the fearless voice standing up for fairness in women's sports. To others, she was nothing more than a spotlight chaser, using someone else's downfall as her own victory lap. But love her or hate her, one fact was undeniable. Piro owned the moment. She rebranded herself as the iron-fisted enforcer of integrity, a woman bold enough to take on the giants of the game. And truth be told, she walked out of that courtroom looking more powerful than ever. Whether people cheered her or despised her, nobody could deny it. Jeanine Pirro had flipped the script in a way nobody ever saw coming. Brittney Griner, the WNBA powerhouse who once looked untouchable, stood silent while a TV judge strutted away holding the win like a championship trophy. The whole thing was surreal, dramatic, and instantly cemented itself as one of those moments destined to be replayed and debated for years. The ripple effect hit the WNBA fast. Players were stunned, rattled by the fact that one of their brightest stars could actually be sidelined in such an unprecedented way. But behind the scenes, not everyone was crying foul. Whispers started circulating that some athletes felt Griner had been coasting on her name for too long. And this ruling finally exposed flaws they had quietly noticed all along. Then came the league itself, caught in a messy no-win situation. Do they step up for one of their marquee faces and risk being accused of defending controversy? Or do they stay quiet, hoping the storm burns out on its own? Either way, the hesitation left the WNBA looking fractured and uncertain about where it truly stood. For the younger players grinding to make a name, the message couldn't be clearer. Fame doesn't buy you immunity forever. Watching Brittney Griner's downfall was a brutal wake-up call that even legends can get knocked clean off their pedestal. And when it happens, the shockwaves rattle the entire league. Some voices rallied behind Griner, slamming the ruling as unfair, extreme, and completely over the top. But others quietly pulled back, almost relieved the spotlight wasn't burning down on them this time. And the league's silence? It spoke louder than any statement. It showed just how fragile reputations in sports really are. One day you're being praised, the next day you're under a floodlight that exposes every single crack. Griner's camp quickly vowed to appeal, but legal experts weren't sugarcoating it. They warned that overturning a ruling of this magnitude is nearly impossible. Piro's side knows they hold all the cards, and that makes every counterpunch from Griner's team a dangerous gamble. Meanwhile, speculation lit up about what Piro might do next. Could she ride this wave and go after another huge name? Fan chatter even tossed out jaw-dropping possibilities. Names like LeBron James or Serena Williams. Unreal? Maybe. But the fact people are even daring to imagine it proves how much this case has shaken the entire sports world. Nobody feels safe when someone like Piro is swinging the gavel this hard. And the shockwaves didn't stop there. Fresh reports hinted that Brittney Griner's past achievements, titles, medals, even her most celebrated milestones, could now be dragged back under the microscope. Imagine that. Her entire legacy rewritten, not through highlight reels or stats, but through courtroom transcripts and the court of public opinion. For an athlete once considered untouchable, the thought of her history being dismantled piece by piece is a nightmare no one thought they'd ever witness. Appeals, investigations, and wild rumors are flying non-stop, all pointing to one thing. This story is nowhere near finished. The gavel may have come down once, but Griner's real fight is only just kicking off. And let's be honest, when you zoom out, the odds don't exactly look like they're stacked in her favor. This was never just Brittney Griner versus Jeanine Pirro. It feels way bigger than that. At its core, this whole saga is about power. Who gets to define fairness, who enforces the rules, and just how much influence a courtroom can hold over the sports world. For years, fans thought the battle was won and lost on the hardwood. But this case shattered that belief, proving reputations, careers, and even Olympic dreams can get ripped away before the first whistle ever blows. For Piro, this ruling was the ultimate power play. She branded herself as fearless, bold enough to challenge giants and walk away with the win. For Griner, it was the harshest defeat of her career, one that could haunt her legacy forever, maybe even one she never fully recovers from. But what do you think? Was this ruling really about justice? Or was Griner made into an example? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to see the truth. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. See you on the next one.